Sending in the troops. Baltimore, Chicago, and New York now on the list of cities where President Trump is threatening to send the National Guard. The pushback he's getting amid a debate over politics and public safety. Plus, new video of a rideshare attack, what sparked a violent confrontation between an Uber driver and a passenger, and AI in the NFL, the new technology coming to the sidelines, and how it could help coaches shape their play calling. ABC News Live Weekend starts right now. Hi, I'm Micah Giacchi in New York. We're going to begin with President Trump adding Baltimore to the list of U.S. cities where he's threatening to send the National Guard. It comes after Maryland's Governor Wes Moore invited the president on a public safety walk next month, aiming to highlight the state's actions to combat crime amid federal funding cuts. Now, the president posting on social media saying if Governor Moore needs help, he'll send in the troops. And when there's no crime and murder, he'll walk proudly in the streets. Meanwhile, Democratic governors in New York and Illinois are pushing back against the president's suggestion he may send the National Guard to fight crime there as well. ABC's Jay O'Brien is following the latest from Washington. Jay, how's Maryland's governor responding to the president right now?
Well, first and foremost, there's been this progression in what the president has said. Just in the last few days, he did this radio interview where he said that this troop deployment to Washington, D.C., this surge of federal law enforcement in the district was a quote-unquote test. And then the day after, the president mused about possibly sending troops to Chicago or New York, or saying in some form or fashion those cities would be quote unquote next. Wes Moore, just around that time, said to President Trump to quote unquote keep Baltimore's name out of his mouth because he was touting the decline in crime in that city. That's what prompted Trump to post that post that you just read. And here's a little bit of what Wes Moore said on CBS's Face the Nation earlier today.
While the president is spending his time from the Oval Office making jabs and attacks at us, there are people actually on the ground doing the work who know what supports would actually work to continue to bring down crime, but it's falling on deaf ears of the president of the United States.
He also went on, Ike, to say that in his view, this is unconstitutional. It's an overstep of the president's authority. He's not allowed to use, Wes Moore says, the National Guard in this way. But there's one more data point here, if you're Wes Moore, which is President Trump also seemed to suggest that he would try to take money back that was appropriated to rebuild the Key Bridge in Baltimore that you'll remember collapsed. You and I were both there the day that it collapsed. That money, Ike, is not money that President Trump controls. It was appropriated in a bill that was passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden. But President Trump in that post seemed to suggest it was him who gave that money to Wes Moore.
A lot of litigious moves right now. But what about the lawsuits over the president's National Guard deployment in Los Angeles? What's the latest on those cases?
Yeah, that case is still progressing. This was the state of California suing over that National Guard deployment and that deployment of 700 active duty Marines to Los Angeles. The government said they were there to support ICE in their jobs as federal agents, but California said again they viewed this as an overreach because National Guard troops and certainly active duty military as well are not allowed to be deployed to American cities unless there is civil unrest in most cases. And so the state of California said that the government was overstepping, and also they federalized the state's National Guard without the governor making a request to that effect, which is highly unusual. The judge seemed to question the government's reasoning in all of this as well, the federal government's reasoning, but he hasn't issued a ruling yet, Ike. They just wrapped up the arguments in this case some weeks back.
Okay, California, Baltimore. President Trump also suggested sending the National Guard to New York or Chicago. So how are those governors in those states responding?
Well, we heard from Governor Kathy Hochul just a few days back, who said that crime is down in New York City and in her state. D.C. officials, by the way, have said the same thing about the president's surge of law enforcement here to the nation's capital. But then J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, pushed back even further and said that there is no emergency in his state and in the city of Chicago, which the president called out by name as he did New York, that would warrant the deployment of National Guard troops or active duty military to his state, Ike.
All right, Jay O'Brien, thank you for that update.